Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things. The first thing is I do have a new healthcare worker provider newsletter that I'm putting out on Substack. It's twice a month, and I focus on two things: regulatory issues and also practice skills, little practice tips. And so if you want to subscribe to that, let me know. I can add you to the list. The second thing is that this Saturday, we are having another Food Over Medicine event at my office. It's Women's Health, how to take control of your hormones through the entire life cycle, all the diet and lifestyle factors that affect that, and a little bit of discussion about HRT and natural hormone replacement, bioidentical hormones, that sort of thing. If you're here in Columbus, you can come join us locally. There will be food. If you are not in Columbus, you can join us remotely, and our Food Over Medicine licensees will be joining with their groups from all over the country. And we're going to be doing this with our dinners as well, so that we can't feed you remotely, unfortunately, because our food is really fabulous, but you can come into the meeting from anywhere. We've been offering free dinners and health talks once a month since I started the company in 1996, a long time ago. So if you're interested in joining us for one of those events, let me know. And if you're interested in becoming a Food Over Medicine licensee, where you get to represent us in your community, and we'll help you build by putting on these kinds of programs all the time, please let me know about that. And if you're interested in careers beyond that, you're a nurse, doctor, want to be an independent practice, dietitian, physical therapist, whatever you're doing, if you're looking to get out of institutional medicine, we have a lot to offer. We've been teaching people how to do it for a real long time. All right, let's get into today's topic. And I'll just start by saying I received a lot of feedback in response to the video I posted last Tuesday concerning intermittent fasting. And it was enough that I thought I would address some of the interchanges in this video, because I think there are some lessons to learn. Now, to be clear, I see considerable evidence to support water fasting for many people for extended periods of time. I've recommended it to hundreds, if not thousands of people. I've sent hundreds of people to fasting centers. So I want to put that out there, that this is different from what we're talking about here, which is intermittent fasting or eating within a specific window every day. So let's start with this. I believe I said it last week, but just in case I didn't, and to be clear, I think if you practice intermittent fasting, your health is good, your weight is normal, and life is swell, well, that's terrific. Continue on. It's your choice. The video that I put out last week was directed at the person who has not yet started this practice and is being told that intermittent fasting provides some advantage over just adopting health-promoting diet and lifestyle habits. Some people are being told it's even necessary for health. You cannot have good health unless you do this. This was directed at people who are having difficulty with intermittent fasting. They find it cumbersome. So that's who it was directed at. All right, so with that, in response to my statements about lack of evidence for intermittent fasting, some of you shared your personal story about how well this has all worked for you. And by the way, this is what everybody does, not everybody, but a lot of people do to promote their diets and choices and all that sort of thing. It works for me. Well, the definition of works is an issue. I testified in front of a federal committee one time about this when numerous doctors and health professionals were offering results of 60 and 90-day really terrible dietary changes, keto diets for children and that sort of thing, and showing that they worked because glucose levels came down. Well, I responded by saying cocaine addiction and chemotherapy work the same way, but I don't think that that's a justification for the use of either one because it produces some type of short-term result. And there are other better options available. Works for me doesn't mean that there's any evidence to support a practice for the general population. Almost anything works for some people some of the time. And for the record, my own mother claimed over the years that diuretic pills and cabbage soup diets and all kinds of other things worked for her. The only problem was she died 20 years prematurely because she never took a long-term view of her health, but I digress a little there. One important point is that not one person who commented submitted any published research to support intermittent fasting. Some of these people were a little vicious. Some made derogatory comments, but no research. If you want to call me stupid, or you want to say that I didn't dig deep enough into the topic, I find that really interesting when you don't submit anything in the way of evidence. So I guess one learning lesson here is that screaming at people doesn't make something so, right? Now, for some specific comments and responses, some of you insisted that research shows that intermittent fasting does help with weight loss and health improvement. You're correct about that. The problem is that it doesn't help much. For example, a less than 2-pound greater weight loss at 12 weeks is not significant, particularly keeping in mind that diet and lifestyle change programs all look best in the short term and they get worse over time. Two important points that I want to make in addition to this. The medical literature is packed with articles showing results that are statistically significant but clinically meaningless. For primary prevention, research shows that statin drugs reduce the risk of heart attack by 0.7%. Statistically significant but meaningless to the individual person who's taking the drug. Second thing I want to point out, the small advantage becomes particularly meaningless when taking into consideration that one of the biggest barriers we have to overcome in helping people to improve their habits is that role models and health professionals seem intent on piling on rules that make it increasingly difficult for people to do this. The diet can't just be plant-based, it has to be vegan. No coffee, never have a glass of wine or cocktail, no refined foods, don't eat anything white, salt will kill you, bread is toxic, there's specific foods you must eat every day, and you can only eat between 8 and 4, and on and on and on. I'm sure some of this is well-intentioned, but it's insane, and it ignores one of the most important aspects of food, that it is to be enjoyed and shared with other humans. Eating together is the first experience humans shared, and food is more than calories and nutrients on a plate. Ignoring this while piling on more and more rules often leads to failures. And here's a statistic that will tell you how perfectionistic approaches to dietary change have failed. Less than 2% of Americans report that they eat a vegan diet, and 85% of those people report that the reason that they do it is animal rights, not health. Some say the report or the percentage is even lower, with one vegan site stating that the entire vegan population is 0.5% of the US. Well, if the goal is to expand reach, things aren't going so well. Now, for the record, I'm a happy vegan. I adopted a vegan diet a long time ago. I like it. I didn't do it for health reasons, by the way. It's not necessary for health reasons, but the point that I'm getting at is this insistence on perfectionism is just not a great idea. Mr. Winston has jumped up here, so apologies for the interruption. We'll hope he doesn't walk on the computer in the next few minutes here. One person seemed to think that the reason that research has shown that intermittent fasting doesn't make much difference is that there's some mainstream bias against the practice. Well, I couldn't find any evidence of this, and I'm not sure who the mainstream is or what the mainstream gets out of discrediting intermittent fasting. Another asks, doesn't your digestive system need a break? Well, it gets a break in between meals and when you sleep. I've never seen any evidence that longer breaks are necessary or even advantageous, except in the case of water fasting for days or weeks for therapeutic purposes. One person wrote, sure, it's not for everybody, but I hope you can talk to more people who found lifelong solutions with some version of intermittent fasting for morbid obesity or inflammatory conditions or autoimmune and other chronic conditions. Well, my response is we've worked with thousands of people in 33 countries during our 27 years in business who have found lifetime solutions for the conditions I just mentioned without intermittent fasting. And I think that's the point. We don't need to make this harder. And I mean, if there really was, I would be the first person to do it and teach it if I thought and the evidence showed that there was an advantage, but there clearly is not. Another one wrote, shame on you, Pam, for not digging deeper on this. I'll just reply that my reputation here speaks for itself. After I learned how to do research properly a few decades ago, not in school, by the way, and by properly, I mean establishing rules that we all agree on and let them lead us to the conclusions that they just lead to. I've not had to retract a single statement I've made about any health-related issue. In fact, it's been the other way around. In other words, for years I told people there's not a single randomized controlled trial that has ever shown that colonoscopy reduces your risk of dying of colon cancer. And people screamed and hollered, and just again, screaming doesn't change that fact. Well, now we have a randomized controlled trial that shows that tens of thousands of people, not only did colonoscopy not prevent death, and again, statistically significant, but clinically meaningless is what you end up with. It did not prevent death from colon cancer. It didn't even prevent getting colon cancer. So much for snipping out all of those polyps over the years. So the bottom line is that I think my reputation is that I dig really deep and I tell people the truth, and I've been not had to retract anything that I've said. And by the way, some people ask, what are these criteria? Well, we have about 19 of them, but just a few. Conflicts of interest. I've already mentioned statistically significant, but clinically meaningless, confusing correlation with causation, and et cetera. And I've never really had anybody argue with me about those things over the years. So if we use those filters and we come up with a conclusion, it just is what it is. So the bottom line, I want to summarize and be clear about this. I'm not discussing any of this in order to talk anybody out of practicing intermittent fasting. In fact, I don't try to convince anybody of anything. When training health professionals, I advise that they should not be in the convincing business. Instead, we should all be in the quote, let me show you how to evaluate health information using agreed upon principles business. And then the choices are up to the consumer. So I did not make this video to defend myself. I don't think I have to do that. I made this video because there were lots of learning lessons inherent in the dialogue that I had by email from some people who wrote to me about this intermittent fasting issue. So I hope that this helps to clarify some things. I hope I made some points along the way that can be useful to you in evaluating all kinds of health-related issues. All right, that's it for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.